For the last 25 years, I've been in real estate, which is my passion. Back in 2015, I started working in the family office space directly for several prominent families on their real estate portfolios. With 70% of families losing their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the third generation, I then realized that real estate would be the missing component for families, allowing them to maintain their legacy and mitigate how much wealth is lost for future generations. It was shortly after working for my first single-family office that I started interviewing successful real estate families and industry experts. These conversations, combined with my first-hand experience of working for families on their real estate investments and currently investing on behalf of families, that has allowed me to share this knowledge with other family offices, family members, and family office professionals so they too can be good stewards of wealth. I'm DJ Van Keuren, and this is Family Office Real Estate Insights from the Family Office Real Estate Institute. Welcome to another edition of Family Office Real Estate Insights. Today we have our guest coming from halfway around the world, actually, now Takhar. We're very happy to have you on here, and especially some of the topics we're going to be talking about. But what I'm going to do, which is a little bit different than normal, is have you take a minute, tell me a little bit about where you are and, why that is, and a little bit about, who you work for.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on. It's really exciting to actually be on this podcast. So I'm Nav. I'm living in Dubai at the moment. Have been living here for about a year and a half, but I'm originally from the UK. I am an investment consultant, so I was initially advising people, family offices, high net worths, VCs on investments, predominantly in the tech space. And when I was doing investment consultancy and I moved to Dubai just for a better quality of life, basically, and I was doing it remotely, more and more of my clients started asking me about Dubai and what's happening there and what's happening in the real estate space, because there's just so much of a kind of a growth spurt in that industry. So now I am predominantly advising on real estate investments as part of my clients' portfolios.
Okay, so there's, here in the States, there is some volatility. We've had interest rates go up, and cap rates have expanded as a whole. But still believe that real estate is a great investment here in the States. Now, looking over to your part of the world, tell me a little bit about what's happening in Dubai. I mean, people will see pictures or they'll hear about it. From a real estate perspective, can you give us some insight? Because that would be very helpful and try to expand anybody listen to this about, what's happening in other parts of the world. So why don't you tell us about that in Dubai?
Of course. So the way I kind of describe Dubai is it's new if you compare it to any of the other major cities in the world. It's not a city that's been developing over the last kind of 400 years, like say Paris or London. It's literally, since the 1960s, I would say it's when the development started. So how I describe Dubai is it's basically, or the UAE in general, is ran like a company. Every single decision is made pretty much on a commercial basis, like how a company would be run. And so with that, all of the development that's happening now, another kind of fact about Dubai is only 25% of the country is developed, with the other 75% either planned or under construction. So that just gives you a really good kind of insight into how much development's happening. Another fun fact, I think something like 90% of the world's cranes are currently here. And every single day a new project is launched or is basically announced. And so over the next particularly over the next 10 years, there's a huge amount of planned development and construction. But unlike kind of other cities that have kind of developed over hundreds and hundreds of years, there's a really key part of the puzzle here, which is it's being developed as a master plan. So there's a 2040 master plan that the Sheikh and the government has put together so that every single development is cohesive with all of the other development to kind of make Dubai the city of the future. And it even goes as far as the 2072 plan, the centennial plan that they're calling it, so that it really is far reaching into the future, that every single development that is happening here at the moment is all with the plan that the government and the royal family have for the country in the next 50 to 60 years.
You know, when I lived in Vietnam, I remember there was a there was a city that was starting to be developed next to Saigon, and downtown Ho Chi Minh, and they had 100-year plan. And
Yeah.
at the time, I was like, "You got to be kidding me! 100 years, right?" But that's really, the way the world looks at things for the most part. It's not necessarily here in the U.S. So one of the questions I have is that everybody seems to be a sheik. Everybody seems to be. So
I love
can
that.
that's the way it feels every time you meet somebody or you talk to somebody, etc. So can you tell me a little bit about uh, that's obviously not the case, but what is that like? Because isn't there a certain number of families that's really driving all of this?
Yes, exactly. So just to give you kind of an overview, 90% of the country is expats, with only 10% as Emirati.
Wow.
Yes, exactly. So, kind of Emiratis, it was only recently, well, I say recently, but only kind of in the last kind of 5 to 7 years, that anyone that isn't an Emirati is able to own freehold here. So that really changed the whole kind of industry, that expats who were living here could then own freehold, so that they were then also kind of investing in a longer term plan for themselves. It wasn't just you come to Dubai, you make a load of money, and then you kind of go back to your home country, and it's not really somewhere that you bring your families. That's completely changed now. It's a very kind of family focused place. And now, so going back to your initial question, I guess that 10% that are the local kind of Emirati population, are very kind of how can I describe it? It's a bit like, if you're familiar with the UK, maybe the gentry of the UK, the kind of like the lords, the dukes, and so it's a very, very small population. But when you hear it, maybe they're the ones that are traveling or being asked to come to certain events and everything else, then yeah, it's maybe a term that they're using. But there are only 5 families that are kind of the royal families that run each of the emirates. So those families are kind of very well known and very prestigious. And those are, the families that kind of have a lot of investment and also incorporation in a lot of the industries that are here. whether that's the finance, oil, real estate, whatever it may be.
How big are those families? How many generations? I mean, how many people are basically, made up, would you guess?
I mean, this is they're very, very, I mean, it's very similar to family offices, right? Very, very private. So we know who the kind of royal family are here, but something also very unique about Dubai, that it's paparazzi are illegal here. Any kind of any kind of media attention like that, it's illegal
Wow.
to have to take someone's photo without their permission. So
Wow.
so it's a real kind of privacy driven place. So this is why I guess a lot of celebs and people come here to, even if it's on holiday, they kind of, it's a bit of a safe haven. So with that in mind, I couldn't exactly tell you, how large those families are. We know the kind of the families, the names of those families and what kind of industries they run, whether that's they're focused on retail or commercial or whatever it is. But I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, I'd say probably many, many generations that's kind of been passed down to. It's not as well known as, say, the English royal family, where everyone knows every single grandchild's name.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all.
So since you've been able to, foreigners or expats have been able to actually invest in Dubai, have there been real estate companies that have actually opened up offices there, relocated to build because of that opportunity?
Absolutely. The opportunity is huge. I mean, if you just kind of go by the numbers I've just told you there, of how much construction is happening. I mean, I just saw some new figures coming out today, and I think it was 50,000 transactions just in the last kind of quarter, and there's like 38% year-on-year growth. On average, 141 billion dollar value in transactions alone. So when you look at the opportunity there, of course, like the company I'm working with, they're called Haus, and that it's actually run by three directors who came from the UK. So, and they've kind of grown the company in throughout kind of the 11 years of the ups and downs, whether that was the financial crashes, whether that's COVID. So the market's kind of seen a lot of volatility, and now we're kind of coming through to, the kind of scale up phase. It's becoming a bit more of a mature market, and with all of these plans in place, it's kind of adding a lot more trust to kind of the development and making it one of the key players when it comes to real estate.
So now you have Sharif law over there, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
That is something I educated myself about that maybe 10, 12 years ago. Can you explain, because a majority of people, I would think, have no idea what that is that listens to this. So can you talk a little bit about that and how that works? And
Yeah. So I think Sharia law is the local law, and that's the law that basically is the ruling kind of governing law here. With one exception, that there's the DIFC, which is the financial district in Dubai, and that is governed by English law. So within that kind of district, there's a lot of banks and financial institutions. A lot of hedge funds have actually moved to Dubai, and English law kind of rules that kind of area.
but doesn't it, Sharif law, deal with loans and certain
Yes.
types of loans? That's really what I'm talking about there. Is that,
Yeah.
what does that mean, and how is that used, and what's the reason behind that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's just something that's, it's unique in that it's called Sharia law, but it's very similar to if you were to say, what country has its own kind of different legalities. Now, one thing that is very standard here, that is everything is done on a very logical commercial basis. So the way that loans are kind of granted, it kind of follows the kind of international global banking system, so to speak. You can get 30-year mortgages just as you would be anywhere else, with the interest rates set the standard kind of bank base rate. The dirham here is pinned to the dollar. So everything, although there's certain things that might be kind of nuances, overall, I haven't really come across something that is very, very kind of out of or abnormal to what I'm used to when I am maybe working with like any other kind of legal contract or transaction. The sale purchase agreements are very, very standard and very kind of straightforward in terms of not, particularly heavy in terms of terms and conditions and things like that. Or yeah.
Okay, so out, and maybe maybe I misspoke or thought, etc. But isn't there some type of a law that has to do from a religion perspective about interest or something like that? Can't collect interest, or maybe I'm wrong.
I think
Maybe it's a
no, I mean, yeah, I think it probably, there was a lot of, it used to be that a weekend had to be like a Friday and a Saturday, but that was changed. So it was standard weekend. So it's again, I think sometimes, yes, it's in if you're looking at kind of within the culture that you should be able to loan someone money or a business money without collecting interest on it. Yes, that kind of goes to the core of the values. But like I said, Dubai is a very commercial place. So I'd say it's something that maybe the wording of interest might be a little bit different here, but there is interest rates. There is, I think one thing I would actually do, I've just thought of this actually whilst we've been on this call, the way that payment plans are structured here. So apologies, when you invest in an off-plan property, for example, and during the construction period, they'll have a payment plan in place. So it might be, okay, you're paying 50 to 60% during construction and 50 to 40% on handover. Now, there is no interest or anything payable during that period. You are just paying, you just are given that time frame. So you put down a 20% deposit. And then as time goes on, you are paying off the payments until the construction period. So maybe that's a little bit, that's something I'm going to go and look at.
wait, let me get this right. You're telling me that if you got a construction loan, you're basically not having to pay interest until it's finalized? Or did I
Yeah.
misunderstand that?
So they're being, I think, again, in the spirit of getting, being extremely investor friendly here. So say there's a project is launched, and then 4 years into the project, then it's going to be handed over. You will get 4 years, you have to pay 50% of that property value. You might take a loan from a bank to try and do that, but the reality is investors are doing it to kind of invest in the future and lock in the price that you're getting at today's rate, so that the capital appreciation is already there at the point that you are getting ready to have it handed over.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, one of the things that we talked about before, we were talking about, okay, international investors, and you don't necessarily just write a check directly, or form a corporation in Dubai, right? You go through various channels on offshore type structure or whatnot. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of people don't understand that there's obviously more complexity because you're dealing with another country, but there are some standard things that happens globally that everybody knows about, that they use, that not necessarily U.S. investors are aware of.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think this is taking advantage of so some of the other benefits that country might offer. So in the UAE, it's 0% tax across the board. No capital gains, no income tax. There's a little bit of VAT, but I think we can live with that. They've recently introduced corporation tax at 9%, but even that has some exemptions to it. So I work very closely with a lot of my clients, and we work on kind of how to set up a trust here. So you can kind of set up a trust, and that is kind of similar to any other kind of offshore entity, so to speak, so that the trust then invests in different, it doesn't have to be property, it can be any kind of asset class. And then that way those kind of assets are, so to speak, is kind of ring fenced, and you can then take advantage of the tax benefits here of at the point that you're liquidating those assets and maybe looking at reinvesting or looking at investing them in some other location.
So would you, if you're a U.S. investor, would you need to set up an account, let's say in, through Singapore to invest, or is it directly then into Dubai?
So you can do it a couple of different ways. One of the things here is they make it very, very easy for non-residents to set up accounts, or even I hadn't heard of it before, for example, in the UK, but you can have a non-resident mortgage, which I didn't even know could be a thing outside of the country you're residing in. But so that's kind of one way. But to be honest, whether that's you set up a entity through Mauritius, Luxembourg, Cyprus, wherever it's going to be, that's the kind of familiar route, that how it's done. Once you invest in property here, if the value of the property is over around $400,000, you can apply for a golden visa. So that golden visa is like a 10-year visa, which gives you residency, so to speak. But there is no requirement in terms of the minimum amount of time you have to be in Dubai, the maximum amount of time you have to stay in your own country or anything like that. There's no kind of timelines. It just gives you all of the kind of perks of having a visa in Dubai without kind of any kind of limitations. So you could really set up a trust. You could set up all of the kind of how the transaction will follow to kind of secure those assets. Once you've kind of secured those assets, you can apply for these a residency visa, so to speak, or a golden visa, and then continue as you would be like a resident here, benefiting from the kind of local.
So let's say that you had a fund and I gave you $500,000. Would that still allow me to qualify for that, or does it have to go in direct into a deal?
Yeah. So there's different ways to do it. You can set up companies and have a golden visa that way. So we have free zones here. There's different areas where there's a free zone. So that's where you can set up a company, and it's actually outside the kind of Sharia law requirements, so to speak. So you can set up a company, very, very easy to do that, and then apply for a visa that way, or you can do it through property. So there's a few different paths.
It's not you can't, sounds like any of those benefits are for 10 years, I think you said. So it's not like being able to get dual citizenship.
No, it's not like you're not. I mean, you could if you wanted to. Now, when I moved here, I kind of did give up my UK citizenship, and we fully committed to moving here. However, if I'd gone for a golden visa and just still kept my citizenship at home open, so to speak, that's the option. That's the way to do it. So that if I was going back and forth, or ever decided to fully go back after, say, 3 years, it wouldn't have any impact on me. With the golden visa, you're really just seeing the benefits in the country. and without having to, it's not a case of declaring that, okay, I've now taken a full citizenship within Dubai or the UAE.
Gotcha. And so with everything that's happening in Dubai, all of this development, all of these tax benefits, is there money coming out of Dubai as well, going into other areas like, let's say, the States? Or is it primarily money coming in to Dubai? Because I know I've seen over the years, there's been a lot of support for Dubai and investing in Dubai and trying to get, all these opportunities and present them on a global basis, right? So, what is that flow of funds typically? What's happening in the country with the flow of funds?
Of course. So I think, what two things that as part of this master plan, the projected growth of the population is looking to double in the next 10 years. So going from kind of 3.5 million to 7 million. Now, with that comes a lot of people needing somewhere to live, a lot of job creation, everything else that is happening now in these next kind of 5 to 10 years will mean that people really kind of set up their lives here. I think, in 2006, there was 10 to 12 schools here. Now there's over 220, with more being built. So it's really becoming like a family orientated location. So with that, there's a lot of, yes, exactly what you're saying there, a lot of investment coming in and a lot of high net worths now looking at, when you look at the kind of, definitely I can speak for the UK, there's been a lot of outflow, and maybe Europe as well, and looking at, okay, where's the best location for me and my kind of, in terms of money. But as you very well know, there is always when investors are looking at their portfolio, they don't just invest in one location, and they don't just invest in one asset class. So a lot of my clients are still looking at the US as a, with everything else kind of going on. Initially it was Miami, and now that's kind of really slowing down. So just looking at whether it's looking at other distressed classes of real estate that they can look at and really flip in a very common way to say it. So it depends really.
So I lived in Vietnam from 2000, 2003. We had 4.5 million people there in the city. I went back about 2, 3 years ago, and it had doubled to 8.5. That is significant. If you're a 3.5 and a doubling, I mean, that is, and the amount of development that took place during that time and that growth period has been significant. And so the first thing I think of when you're telling me this, and that's what their objective is that now's the time you'd want to start investing into Dubai, because you're going to be able to ride that uptick, right?
Of course.
So, okay, so this is one of my last questions, because I mean, we could go on for a long time. I want to have you back on, but all right. So here I am in the States. Everything you're talking about, I'm like, okay, there's a great opportunity here. How would one do that? I'm sitting here in the States. I haven't been there, right? So what type of investments is a good way in to a different market like Dubai?
Yeah. So I mean, it's exactly that. I'm glad you said it. It's extremely exciting. It is growing at a existential rate. So when you look at, when someone says, if someone said to you, look, you can invest in New York when it was 25% developed, you would do that. You would seriously consider that. Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry, it just cut out. So I think it's always through a conversation, and it always depends what the investors' goals are. So there are opportunities from, investing $250,000 all the way up to $250 million. That's, you can go all the way up to retail and commercial units and everything else. Anything that you want to invest is currently being developed here. Roads are always being built. The key part of all of this is that the infrastructure is really, really seriously being considered. So it's not just throwing a load of new kind of housing and development and schools in without even thinking, okay, well, how is the infrastructure going to work? How are these people going to get to work every day? So I think that's a really key thing. And when we look at which areas, the areas that I really focus on is whether it's a mature area or whether it's a new one. One thing you can guarantee is that the infrastructure and the development around that, whether that is a master community of some sort, whether the retail, the schools, everything else will be built around it. So you're not just going to be left in the desert, so to speak, which, a lot of people do worry about. We were speaking about earlier, the payment plans are extremely investor friendly to give you that kind of comfort factor. The payment plans are also basically matching the construction. So you only pay 50% at the point that 50% of the project is constructed. It's very heavily regulated here. So that then gives you that kind of comfort with escrow accounts and everything else that your money is safe. Also flipping the property, at what point would it make sense? At what time in the construction period would it make sense? If you wanted to have something to flip in a couple of years versus something that's going to give you more kind of a longer term plan. And if you've got the patient capital, what makes sense for, when it comes to 2040 and everything else is developed, what's going to give you the greatest kind of ROI? So it really comes from an initial conversation, I say, usually, and really understanding what the kind of investment criteria are for each individual.
Yeah, and that's the one thing we talked about, 100-year plan, right? And a long-term plan. That's the problem with any of the cities we have here in the States, is they never thought long-term, right? They were building as it was happening. And that's a significant, difference and benefit actually from where you're at. So, okay. So let's say that one thing I didn't do, and I want you to, is that, so who are you working with now? And, in that area, because the one thing I learned when I lived in Vietnam was that you need local partners. You
Of course.
have to have local partners. You have to have people that understand, it's the same thing here in the States if you're going to invest in a different city. But when you go into another country, it's a whole nother world, literally.
100%.
So you have to have local, so you have to have local contacts and people. And, we met in Miami at an event, which I'm thankful that we did, because I never would have met you. And now I'm like, I have a contact over in Dubai, right? So who are you working with now? And why don't we talk briefly about that, and then, we'll finish up.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. So I think I mentioned it before in my intro. I was doing investment consultancy across pretty much across the board. And when it came to real estate, it's like I said, when a project's being launched every single day, you've got to be very much in the know, and you've got to have boots on the ground. That's why I'm here. I work with all the major developers. I have contacts with all the major developers. So, when it comes to a new launch, when it comes to exclusivity, sometimes they exclusively give us their best units, which is great. And we get a kind of a head start in offering that to our clients. Because as, you might have seen with Dubai, a whole building can sell out in hours. It's crazy. People are just kind of ready there with their money, and then it's within 2 hours, 200 units gone.
Wow.
So with that, it's really important for me to have really strong kind of relationships with each of the major developers. And one of the reasons for partnering with Haus, who I work with, is that integrity piece as well. They will only work with the best. We only advise on kind of, once we've done a really kind of thorough investment analysis. It's not just a case of, oh, this one looks really nice and shiny, or this one's going to be the tallest. They're all going to be the tallest until the next one comes along. It's a case of really fully assessing, what is the apartment split? How many are studios? Well, okay, how does that coincide with the 3 buildings near it? What is the percentage of ROI, the realistic percentage, not the marketing percentage, and what does that look like after service fees are paid, or when you're looking at if your electricity and AC and everything isn't included within that. So all of those things, I think, totally agree, where, there's only one way to do it, and it's to have someone on the ground here to kind of really understand what one project is versus another project, because otherwise it's a lot of white noise. And these companies are excellent in terms of their marketing, whether that's on the flight over, people are telling me about something they've seen, or internationally they do roadshows. And I've had loads of clients saying, oh, we saw a roadshow from such and such a developer, we saw that one, or whatever. And that's great, because I think they're really putting Dubai on the map. However, it's really important when you're making this investment to feel fully comfortable with it, and to understand exactly what you're buying, where you are buying it, and why, what the expectation is and what the exit strategy is. So I'd say that it's our job there to kind of get all of that information, analyze it all, and really provide that so that the investor can make a really informed decision.
Well, I can tell you that Dubai is now on my radar, and
Good.
And I'd love to let's have you back, because I'd love to go into typical returns and how long properties are being held, because if they're selling out as fast as you're saying, I mean that's pretty incredible. So now, Takhar, thank you so much for being on the show, and we definitely want you to come back. When you come to the States, you have to let me know. And I'm still trying to get over there. One of my best friends lives there. I think I told you that before.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
So you might see me in your home where you're at before I see you
That'd
here.
be great.
Thank you so much for being here, and let's definitely keep in touch. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.